Hi, everybody. DJ Yokley with you for another edition of Coach's Corner with head coach of the Sebring Trojans. It's Matt Seidel. Coach, how we doing?
I'm doing well, DJ. How are you this week?
Living the dream, brother. Living the dream as always. Another week, another opportunity to create opportunity for Trojan country. Coming up a little bit short last week. What did you see on tape that you liked? What did you see on tape that we need to work on for week 6?
Yeah, so the good news for us is last week was the kind of anomaly in our season, and that's that Louisville likes to get out there and swing the rock around. They're about almost a 70% pass team. I think last week we talked about, we did the math, they're like 66.6% pass. And that's just a crazy number, especially for Division 7,
Right.
but really for our league as a whole. And so, we get kind of back to the traditional run style teams this week with Western Reserve, a perennial powerhouse program in our league. Coach has them doing good things over there. And really, when I look at them on film, they're just a couple plays here and there away from, not being a 2-3 team, but being maybe a 4-1 team, or, they're right on the cusp of being a really good football team this year too.
You got to believe, or I got to believe, that if you're watching tape on Western Reserve, you're watching tape on that Jackson Milton game. Talk to me about what you see and what you're looking to expose tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think that we can continue to have success with our run game. Elijah and Noah Frederick have done a heck of a job for us all season long running the football. Mix in a little bit of Cody Horning in there as a lead blocker slash jet sweep kind of guy. And, we've got the potential to break big plays all over the place in the run game. Pair that with the fact that our offensive line has really started to mature and gel this season. We've got some young guys and some first-time guys in there to mix in with those veterans like Frankie Lazoya and Matt Bird. And so they're really starting to come together for us.
It was really cool to see last week. One of probably the coolest moments I've had on YSN when Cody handed the ball off to was it Matt?
The Matt, yes.
I mean, talk to me about you're watching that on the sidelines, and you know exactly what's going on. We tried to highlight it from a photo standpoint. I know one of your coaches put it out there. We tried to share it. We're looking to get that video and share it here socially. What does that feel like to you? I mean, that's got to, as a coach, as a man, that's got to make you feel good about what you're doing and how you're leading.
It definitely does, DJ, and I think it just speaks to the quality of the character of the kids that we're bringing into the football program over here. And so on the play that you're mentioning, it was late in the game. The game was a little bit out of reach already, anyway. But Cody was able to recover a fumbled snap, and the ball kind of got kicked around a little bit. It just so happened that 3-4 of our guys were right there. And Cody just happened to be the guy, because he always seems to be the guy that came up with the football and took off downfield. And he realized right around the 30 that Matt Bird was running right there with him. And, they told me after the game that they had kind of had that conversation when last year Matt made the switch from being a tight end to the offensive line, of Cody saying to him, hey, you're doing this for us, so one of these days I want to do something for you, and I'd like to try and get the ball to you and get you in the end zone. And, that was a conversation they had at the beginning part of last year. And for Cody to just remember that and to show some love, to one of his offensive line guys, one of the guys that doesn't, always get the notoriety, and, the name's not in the paper every single week. It just speaks to how strong the brotherhood is.
It really is. And when you look at what you're up against this week, you and I have talked on the record, off the record. Your team typically suits better against a run team because when you run the ball, you wear down a little bit, and that goes to what you're trying to do. You're going to win games in the third and fourth quarter because teams are fatigued. If another team is running the ball at you, they're fatiguing themselves as well. Do you feel comfortable? And I say that word relatively speaking. Do you feel comfortable going into this game knowing what you have to execute from the X's and O's to walk away with a W heading into what I'm calling second season for the Sebring Trojans?
Yeah, you're right. This is an important week for us because this is a set the tone kind of week. And we've had conversations all week long about, you beat the team you were supposed to beat. You beat Waterloo. Now it's time for us as a program to take that next step and get that signature win for the program. The win that nobody expected you to get. Sort of like the Mineral Ridge over Jackson Milton last week. Nobody expected it. It comes out of left field, and you've really cemented yourselves as being on the map for the next couple of years and for the next few weeks as, hey, this program has turned the corner. And so that's what we really want to try and accomplish this week. From a X's and O's standpoint, I think that we've got a good game plan going into this week. A lot of credit to my coaching staff for, again, really getting into the film this week and really watching a lot of film. I've got some coaches that are over 5-6 hours of film watched this week, getting prepped for this game. And that's what we're really hoping is that between us running the ball and defending their run, we can just kind of hang around long enough to have a shot at it late in the game.
I mean, you 5-6 hours of watching film. That's pretty impressive. I mean, and those aren't during. All your guys are full time somewhere. So you're talking about time that is away from work. It's away from family. It's away from practice. They're watching this film at probably 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, putting that extra time in for your guys.
Yeah, and it's really just a testament to my coaching staff and the kind of guys that I've got around me and the kind of guys that we've got around this program now. We've got guys that I think I've mentioned to you before. They're all Sebring graduates. They're all guys that have played, with the purple and gold on. And for them to be willing to take time away from their families, away from their wives and kids, just away from everything. I think of a guy like Jamie Regai, who's one of my assistants that's been here for a long time. And, he's got twin daughters that are juniors at the school, and they play volleyball and they play basketball and they play softball. They just play it all. And the time that he's given up away from some of their sports and arriving late to volleyball games and maybe not getting a chance to go to away games, the families are fantastic too. And that's why it's important for us to, make sure that we thank all of them, for giving up their time with their loved one too.
No, I can appreciate that. You've talked very highly of your coaching staff, as you should. Your kids talk very highly of you, and naturally that leads us into you've been a part of this a long time, the Trojan tradition. You alluded to a little bit earlier. You look around the league, and you look at that Jackson Milton game where Mineral Ridge upset them, so to speak. Do you look at situations like that, and you point to that as this is what we want to do? We want to disrupt kind of the normalcy that is the MVAC and who is who. I mean, what kind of motivation do you use as other teams are doing it, and now you have an opportunity to do it here in Week 6?
Yeah, we've talked before about what a tight-knit group, the coaching circle kind of is. And I've had discussions, especially over the last week or so, with Coach Shaner and Coach Brode over at Jackson Milton. And, we've just talked about what those statement wins. The Jackson Milton win over Western Reserve for the first time in, I think, 16 years. And then for a program like Coach Shaner's over at Mineral Ridge to take that next step and say, hey, an undefeated Jackson Milton team, and we're going to knock them off. And not only are we going to knock them off, we're going to shut them out and hang a 45 on them. We've talked about what that's meant to their programs and how that next step comes now. And what we're hoping to have, as all of the coaches in our league, is a league that's strong from top to bottom with a ton of parity throughout the league, where any given year, any given team, any Friday night, you never know what's going to happen. We want to create in the MVAC what they've got in the MAC out in the western part of the state, where they don't care what division you are. They don't care what size you are. They're going to strap up and play on Friday night, and one or two of those teams every year is going to win a state championship. Yep. That's what we've got to get this MVAC conference to.
Here's what I'm excited about. So you and I have had conversations all day today, and you can speak freely because you're not going to the playoffs. You've already opted out. We've already crossed that bridge. Talk to me about what you saw today, the craziness that was today when the playoffs were released. And was there an ease across you this morning knowing, listen, I'm not even worried about that. I've got my own structure, what I'm worried about for the next 4 weeks? Or was there a, man, you miss being part of that?
Yeah, I think it's natural to have that. Well, where would we have fallen?
Yep.
Like, where would we have been in this, and who would we have been playing, and what would the matchups have looked like? And so, of course, just as human nature, I kind of did a little bit of that. But at the same time, I know that we've made the right decision for our program and what's best for our kids and going forward. And it's going to allow us to hopefully take that next step as a program so that maybe next season or the season after that, we're going to be one of those teams that's fighting for that playoff spot at the end of the season and getting in there and really making some noise. I thought it was really interesting to see the way it kind of worked out with some of the coach voting. Couple of teams that surprised me where they ended up. You and I had kind of talked about Ignatius getting a home game at 0-2 record. That just kind of takes you by surprise, and probably well deserved by Ignatius. That's a perennial powerhouse program, and you can't say too much about it because that the coaches voted for this.
Right.
And that's where they think that Ignatius belongs. And then at our level, I think there's some really tough first games. I know Jackson Milton's probably really wishing that they had Friday night back at this point to draw McDonald in the first round. That's going to be a tough matchup, and it'll be a fun game to watch. Obviously, hate when in the first couple of rounds our teams get matched up with each other because I'd much rather see that happen in the regional final than the first round. But I think it's going to be a fun postseason. No matter how it shakes out. Obviously. Had we Tony on the schedule for a long time now. That's a traditional rivalry game for us. I think Coach Julia is doing a fantastic job down there. The turnaround that they've had in the past 2 seasons has just been remarkable. And a lot of credit, you have to take your hat off to him and his kids for the work that they've put in. So I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting a chance to see some of those games. And I know you guys are offering the new package now, so I think I'll be buying it.
Oh, look at this guy. The sales guy comes out. Yes, for $9.99, you get all the games instead of just one. So there you go, man. I appreciate you, brother. Hey, one of the things I wanted to ask you. Now, you talked about the coaches kind of setting up the playoffs. Is that something you'd want to see continued, or do you like the computer point system?
The Harbin computer point system has been around forever now. Everybody's kind of used to it. But I think that there is some fun to that coaches seating, kind of like they do in basketball. And I think that, from year to year, there are some teams when you look at some of the records that it's like, well, maybe that team's not quite as good as what that record says that they are. And I can think of a couple of teams this year. I won't call anybody out by name, obviously. But maybe their schedule's a little bit softer than another school's schedule. And I think that as coaches, we see that and we kind of know from year to year, okay, that team's got a little bit softer of a schedule this year. So I would really like to see the coaches' vote being taken into consideration every year again. I think it creates some interesting matchups, and especially when the votes go public, I think that it creates a little bit of chalkboard material for some guys. And that's never a bad thing. Maybe you'll get a little bit more parity through the playoffs if you let the coaches decide who should be where.
Now, we know you're a quote guy. I'm interested. I'm reading some books right now, kind of a motivational thing. What are some of the best books that you've ever picked up, and maybe some that you've read a couple times through?
I love that you're asking me a book question because I'm a book guy. And I'm not really a read for entertainment kind of guy. I'm more of a read for, business development, self-help, whatever it might be. I think I've read about every coaching book that there is out there. Whether it's, basketball coaching or I don't even care what the sport is. I just like to look at the different philosophies on building the team and the way that guys, structure their practice schedule. But I think one of my all-time favorites has to be The Winner's Manual for the Game of Life by Jim Tressel. That's right up there at the very top. A great book that kind of goes through not only football but life, and that's something that we've tried to kind of model our program after. Is we're not only setting these kids up to be football players, but we're setting them up for life after football too. And so I want to do things like what Urban Meyer did at Ohio State, where they had the Real World Wednesdays, and they brought people in to talk to them about, what possible career paths there were after their playing days were over. I think that's a big responsibility that we take on as coaches, is developing young men into future leaders of their community.
Well, you're doing a great job. I can tell you that because I've heard it all around the league, and your players each and every week just speak so highly about you. So, Matt, congratulations. Best of luck in week 6, and we'll talk to you right before you start second season next week, right here on the Pizza Joe's Coach's Corner with Matt Seidel.
Thanks so much.